How many of you remember the Jerry Seinfeld TV series? Did you love it? You watched it? If you watched it, you remember the Soup Nazi episodes. No soup for you. No soup for you. End of line. Well, this, fellow Toastmasters and honored guest Tanika, is how I feel at work when my coworkers bring in their backyard farm-raised eggs and sell them to the coworkers. They are prized eggs, they're delicious, and for some reason I can never get on the list for somebody to sell me the eggs. I feel I can hear that in my head. No eggs for you. No eggs for you. Well, I decided last year that I'd had enough of this, not being able to get on the privileged egg list. I decided I was going to get my own chickens and raise my own eggs. Therefore, I like to do things in a researched manner and not dive in. As I get older, I find that's a good trait to develop. I also knew that my husband was going to be a hard sell because he's a bit of a city slicker. He likes to think he's a country boy, but trust me, I grew up on a farm. I raised chickens, pigs, cows, sheep, everything. So I knew this was going to be a cakewalk, but I needed to walk my husband through this journey of raising chickens. I was biding my time. So I was thinking spring of 2014 would be a good time to get into the chicken business. Get them when they're little chicks, raise them up, get them going. I didn't want to do it during the winter because, well, it's winter. Well, serendipity happened to me one day when my coworker was lamenting that her neighbors had chickens that they just let run loose, but they have finally resolved the issue by tying a rope to the chicken and tying it to the fence. Now, Erin's a pet lover. Immediately was stressing out about this poor chicken. She was afraid it was going to get itself hung up on the fence and die. So she was researching chicken houses. She was going to rescue this chicken. And she mentioned to me that she'd found the cutest little chicken house online at Petco. My ears perked up. Really? Because I couldn't figure out how I was going to house my chickens that I didn't have. Well, I got online and I checked out, and indeed, there is the cutest little chicken house at Petco. And before I know it, PayPal had made a transaction for me. And a week later, I was a proud owner of 2 boxes of parts for a chicken house and a coop. Well, that summer, my son and my husband put it together, and it was a darling little thing. I kept going out fawning over it, but I realized I'm not getting chickens this year. So we decided to wrap it up. We tarped it up, stacked it on the side of the upper house, left it. Was not going to be used till spring of 2014. Well, you probably have all heard that tagline from the famous movie Field of Dreams. Say it with me. If you build it, they will come. Yes, they will come. In December 8th, as a matter of fact, my husband was leaving he goes to his sister's a few times a year, so he's leaving for 4 days. So I took off work early. It was the coldest day, coldest weekend of December, of that winter, I think. It was about 3 o'clock. I drive up into my yard and I get out of the car and I hear a and I listened and I thought, oh, it's the flag waving on the side of the house because of the wind. I trotted down to the mailbox and I opened the mailbox. I heard a quack, quack. My ears really perked up and some excitement rose up in my chest. I thought, I think I hear a chicken. And so I investigated. I walked down the street. I walked down to my lower lot. And we have a lot of trees down there, and there's a crab apple. And I'm hearing this, bark, bark. And so I squawked back. You know, I tell people I speak 3 languages, English, Dutch, and mumbling, but actually I speak a 4th language, chicken. So I walk, walk. I hear walk, walk back. And I'm thinking, I got a chicken in my yard on December 8th. So I'm thinking, okay, this is really weird. So I look a little bit further and I hear some rustling, and out of the bushes comes a chicken. Nell, I named her. That's what I do. Then I remembered from all my reading and research, oh my gosh, chickens need water. They need a water source, and it's freezing out here. They need food. This chicken needs food. I had to do something. I had to act fast. I ran to the house. I got a bucket of water. And then I remembered we have cracked corn because we feed quail. We have quite the outdoor wildlife habitat going on in our yard. I found the cracked corn, and I went down there and I started scattering it. Boy, this chicken came running. But oh, I've got a chicken. I've got a chicken. Now what? I set the water out, and then I went back in the house because let me tell you, it was like 6 degrees or -6. I wasn't sure. It was cold. And I fretted for the next 18 hours. I texted my husband. I sent him a picture. Got a chicken. He texted back, you sure that's not a pheasant? I won't tell you what I texted back. But so then I finally went to bed, but I didn't sleep very well because I was worried about this chicken and the fact that my dad's cat, Trouble, was stalking this chicken relentlessly. I saw the chicken clear up in the crabapple tree and this cat trying to get out there, but the cat was heavier than the chicken. Anyhow, I went to bed, and then the next morning before dawn, I'm up looking out the window, watching to see where's my chicken, Nell. And I was worried. Finally, I'd look out, and underneath the mugo pine, we have a seed block for feeding winter birds. And there was a chicken right there with the sparrows and all the other birds that come into our yard just pecking away. And I'm thinking, I've got a chicken. I couldn't believe this was so cool. So then as soon as stores opened up, I ran to the co-op. And I got a heated water bowl. I got some flock builder. I've got 1 chicken, I might as well have 10. I got a flock builder. Got home, and just for the rest of the weekend, I was just mesmerized by this chicken. And I fretted and I worried. I put it on Facebook, and my one friend said, Debra, chickens are pretty much bulletproof. A nuclear bomb could hit, and that chicken will probably come a clucking and a squawking out of there after it all settles. And sure enough, Nell was that bulletproof kind of a chicken. The rest of the winter, she spent living either in our mugo pine or in our spruce tree out on the front of the driveway. She didn't want to go in my cute little hen house. Didn't like that. Well, as the weather improved, the hours lengthened, we saw more and more of Nell. And I decided she'd become such an adventurous little fun bird that I had to give her a Facebook page. We called it Nell's News. And it says, sharing the interesting journey of one golden spangled Hamburg hen as she lives out her chosen adopted life on Manor Drive. Within 36 hours, I had 38 likes. Now try that with your Facebook pages, Toastmasters. It ain't happening. As the days continued to lengthen, Nell became more and more gregarious with us. She started working her way into the backyard where my 3 dogs live. I was really worried about that. She walked all over the neighborhood. People thought maybe it was their chicken. They didn't know where this chicken had come from. We found out it would walk the neighborhood girl to school in the mornings, follow her down to the bus. In the afternoons, it'd hang out in the arborvitae at the neighborhood boy's house. It even went over and visited my dad. People would stop on the street and say, is that your chicken? We wondered whose chicken that was. And I wasn't sure what the zoning things were, so I'd always say, oh, isn't that fun? She just showed up one day. As time went on, we took more and more pictures, but I kept thinking, shouldn't this chicken be laying eggs? And one other thing about the neighbors, we did find out from one of our neighbors that their friends had turned loose all their chickens in December because they were tired of raising them. That's where we think Nell came from. And I wonder to this day what kind of people would do that on a -6 degree day in December, but ours was the benefit of that. Nell was a very personable, in-your-face kind of chicken. If you were out there, kind of like a cat is, if you're on the patio, your cat's there. You're trying to enjoy your coffee or tea or your wine, and the cat's right there doing that. Well, Nell was doing the same thing. Go out in the yard and try and work. I'd be trying to pull weeds. Well, Nell would be right there because there might be a worm or something in that soil. But then I had a cat on the other side of me, and it was frustrating but fun, embracing that. Ray one day sent me a picture at work. It was eggs, like 10 eggs. I said, where did those come from? Because we've been trying to find her eggs. Nell had come into the backyard where the 3 dogs live, gotten under my potting bench, and decided that's where she was going to start laying her eggs. And it was a delight to get those little pretty gray eggs. It was very nice. In May, as the weather continued to improve, on May 7th, Ray and I were sitting out in our yard and having a glass of wine with Bridget the cat and Nell the chicken. I should tell you too, another thing that endeared Nell to us was Bruce Noyes has Animal Cascade Care Products, and he gifted us these mealworms, a small bag. You see, we've moved up. This is crack for chickens. You'll have them eating out of your hand. It's dried mealworm. Many countries in the world actually eat these. Humans do, but I wouldn't recommend it. We'd be feeding her mealworm, and here she would come running. She'd hear that bag, and she'd come wherever she was in the yard, she'd come running. So on May 7th, we're sitting out in the yard enjoying a glass of wine, and here comes Nell. So we'd moved from this wariness of each other to this becoming closer to each other, to eating out of your hand, to finally we progressed to circus act. And hopefully you can see this picture. This is Nell. I'm sitting there in my little chair, and Nell lands right on top of my head for the longest time. Ray shot a video of it. We talked about it. It was very fun. But just as suddenly as Nell came into our life, and just as surprisingly, she left. The very next morning, Ray texted me. He was leaving for Port Angeles again. He texted me that the neighbors had found Nell's body in our yard. And to this day, I think it was Dad's cat Trouble had killed it, because if it had been the coyote or something, we think they would have taken it. But it was 5 good months of fun with Nell. And I think the moral of the story could be, if you build it, they will come. But I think the moral of the story is, if there's a Nell, there's a way. Mr. Toastmaster.